Today we are reading chapter 9 and chapter 10, so we're going to start off with chapter 9, The Agent. Zoe was waiting at the curb in front of the school when Natalie got out of her taxi on Monday morning. Her first look into Natalie's face told Zoe everything. Cassandra Day was dead again. With a little too much forced cheerfulness in her voice, Zoe said, "Hi, Nat! Get some good writing done this weekend?" Natalie pressed her lips together, shook her head, and frowned. She stepped around Zoe and went up the front steps. Zoe was right behind her. "Come on, Natalie, don't give up. I've got a whole new idea. Really, it's a good one." Just inside the glass doors, Natalie turned around. "Listen, can we just stop talking about this? I'm sorry I ever showed you my dumb story, so let's just forget about it, okay?" But Natalie knew better. Even as she was saying the words, asking Zoe to stop something halfway was like asking a chimp to lay off of the bananas. Zoe was all business. "Are you done pouting now? Because I've got something important to say. I talked with my dad and I did some thinking, and all that Cassandra Day needs is a good agent. You know what an agent is?" Natalie heaved a sigh and shrugged off her backpack, letting it thump onto the floor behind her. "Yes, I know what an agent is, and I talked with my mom, so I also know that it's almost as hard to get an agent for a book as it is to get a book published." "Well, what would you say if I told you I already got you an agent?" "You're kidding, right?" "No, I'm not kidding," said Zoe. "So who is it?" Natalie was cautious but interested and even a little bit flattered. Zoe smiled. "Okay. Her name is Sherry Clutch, and she's known my dad for more than 10 years, and thanks to me, she knows all about your story, and she's really interested, even if the book's not totally finished yet." Natalie narrowed her eyes and looked sideways at Zoe. "So what's the catch? I mean, there's got to be a catch." "No, really, there's no catch, except..." "Aha!" Natalie cut in. "Except what? That sounds like a catch to me. Come on." Zoe went on. "Well, you know how you're Cassandra Day? Well, Sherry Clutch, she's me. Get it? I'm your agent." Natalie's face was a dictionary of emotions. Horror, disbelief, disappointment, then anger. She grabbed her backpack, wheeled around, and started up the stairs. "That's not funny, Zoe. It's not funny at all." Again, Zoe was at her heels. "But listen, Natalie, I can do this. I really can. An agent is just someone who works for a writer. It's just a person who really believes a writer is great. I know your book is good, and I know you can get your mom to take it seriously. It's just gonna need a fair shot, and I know it." Natalie didn't stop, and she didn't turn around. She turned left at the first corridor and headed for her locker, taking long, purposeful strides. Zoe sprinted ahead, turned, and planted herself in Natalie's path. Natalie was a whole head taller, and Zoe half expected to be knocked over. But Natalie stopped. Jaw clenched and eyes hard, she looked down in Zoe's face. Zoe said, "Please, Natalie, just give it a try. It'll be fun. And I know I can do this. I know I can. And don't you think Sherry Clutch is just like the most perfect name for an agent?" Part of Natalie just wanted to push right past this girl and never talk to her again, but her training as a writer stopped her. In a fraction of a second, in that way, that's what writers do. She took a mental step back, considered the scene before her. There was Zoe. Ridiculous, yes, but also completely loyal, completely enthusiastic, completely confident. Here they stood in the hall, face to face. Dozens of kids streamed by in both directions. Lockers slammed, laughter and shouts and noise rose all around them, and in that instant, Natalie saw what mattered. It wasn't whether the book got published or not. It wasn't whether Zoe was absolutely crazy, which she was. The important thing was Zoe herself, her friend. So Natalie had to roll her eyes and smile. I mean, she had to. And then she put out her hand and shook Zoe's. Then, in the author's voice, Natalie said, "Miss Clutch, I'm Cassandra Day. My friend Zoe says you're a terrific agent. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? In bits and pieces during their morning classes, Zoe told Natalie about her plans. Natalie had to admit they were impressive. Crazy, but still impressive. Except that, as usual, Zoe wanted to do everything herself. But during lunch, Natalie said, "It all sounds good, Zoe, but I want to have Miss Clayton read my book too. She might have some ideas on how to get it published." Zoe looked hurt. "Miss Clayton? What does she know?" Natalie shrugged. "I don't know. That's what I want to find out." "But I've already thought of everything." Natalie narrowed her eyes. "Everything? I don't think so. I mean, look at this." Natalie pointed at the piece of stationery that Zoe had designed and printed up on her computer at home over the weekend. "Zoe, I hate to tell you, but the stationery doesn't look real." "I know," said Zoe, "but it's just a prototype. I'll take it to Quick Copy and have 50 sheets printed on nice paper." Natalie said, "That's not what I mean." She pointed to the top of the page, below where it said Sherry Clutch Literary Agency. "Look, there's no office, there's no address, there's no phone number, no email, no fax number. No one's going to believe that this is a real publishing company." Zoe gave Natalie one of her "do you really think I'm that dumb" kind of looks. She patted Natalie's arm and said, "Trust me, I've got it all figured out. I really do, that's my job, remember? But if it'll make you feel better to have Mrs. Clayton get involved, then fine. That'll be fine. I'll figure that out too. All you have to do is finish the book and leave the rest to me." Natalie wished it could actually be that simple, but she knew better. With Zoe in charge, nothing was simple. Chapter 10, The Chosen Grown-Up. And so here we get to see a close-up shot of our Mrs. Clayton. Laura Clayton sorted the remains of her lunch into the recycling bins in the teacher's room. Glass, paper, plastic. As she rinsed her salad container, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror above the sink. She looked exhausted. It was her second year of teaching, and it was January, and Laura Clayton had to keep reminding herself that she loved her job. Miss Clayton glanced up at the clock, then opened the hallway door and walked briskly toward her classroom. She didn't feel prepared for sixth period. She never felt prepared for sixth period. It was her most challenging group of kids, and the hour between 12:30 and 1:30 was when her daily energy level hit rock bottom. Nothing, not her own years in New York's best private schools, not her bachelor's degree from Barnard College, not her master's degree from Bank Street College, not even her student teaching internship. Nothing had prepared her for the daily grind of classroom teaching, and especially teaching her sixth grade class on a Monday afternoon. The Deary School emphasized writing, and Laura Clayton agreed wholeheartedly. The curriculum required at least 3 writing assignments per week. Again, Miss Clayton agreed. Writing was a vital skill, but she taught 5 English classes a day to grades 5 through 8. Even though Miss Clayton's average class size was only 13 students, if she gave a simple 1-paragraph writing assignment to each kid, that meant at least 4 hours of reading and commenting and evaluating in front of her that evening. A group of Laura's friends from Barnard College still lived in the city, and they couldn't understand why she wouldn't go out to the clubs and shows with them on weeknights anymore. They had jobs at places like banks and ad agencies and department stores and publishing companies. One of her friends even worked at the United Nations. They had jobs where a person could slide by on 4 hours of sleep once in a while. Miss Clayton had tried teaching 5 English classes on 4 hours of sleep once or twice. Now, she knew better. The sound of chirping robins came from the speaker below the clock in Miss Clayton's room. That was the class passing sound for February. 4 years back, the new headmaster had replaced the bell timers with programmable sounds. So far this year, the passing sounds had been a humpback whale, the honking of migrating geese, a bouncing basketball, the sound of bamboo wind chimes, and a Mozart flute solo. The old alarm bell was gone, but chirping birds had the same effect. Kids burst from their walled containers all over the school, and for 7 minutes a cheerful chaos shook both buildings of the Deary School. Then the sound of chirping robins played much louder for the start of class signal. Magically guided each student to the doorway of another walled container. For 14 of the sixth graders at Deary School, that moment, English class in Linden Room. Miss Clayton braced herself as sixth period began. 53 minutes later, robins chirped again in the Linden Room. Mrs. Clayton handed out an assignment sheet explaining how to write a short, persuasive essay, and then she dismissed the class. The kids left the room heading for their exercise period, and Miss Clayton picked up an eraser and began clearing the chalkboard. As she methodically swept the board clean, she took stock. Overall, it had been a pretty decent class. They had read editorials on the same subject from 3 different news magazines. They had identified the persuasive words and techniques of each writer. The discussion had been lively, but not too unruly, and the students did most of the talking. All in all, it had been a pretty good session. And now she had a full hour before her last class of the day. Another Monday almost over. When Mrs. Clayton finished erasing the board and turned around, Zoe and Natalie were standing beside her desk. Miss Clayton said, "Yes, girls? What is it?" As arranged, Natalie spoke first. "Miss Clayton, Zoe and I want to start a writing club, and we were wondering if you could be our advisor." Miss Clayton smiled at them and sat down in her chair. "A writing club? You mean like creative writing?" Natalie nodded. "Yeah, that's right, creative writing." Miss Clayton was pleased. Natalie was a talented writer, easily better than any of her other students, even in the grades 7 and 8. No matter what writing assignment she was given, Natalie Nelson's work always stood out. She turned to Zoe. Zoe's writing was all right, but it was nothing like Natalie's. Miss Clayton said, "And you, Zoe, you want to be in the writing club too?" Zoe said, Oh, yes, I do." "And do you want to invite students from upper grades to join?" asked Miss Clayton, "or were you just thinking about having it be a 6th grade club?" Zoe said, "Well, we were really hoping that it would just be me and Natalie in the club, because, well, we want it to be more like a publishing club." Mrs. Clayton's eyebrows went up. "A publishing club?" "Yeah," said Zoe, "because you see, well, I mean, you know how Natalie's a great writer. Well, she's almost done with her first novel, and it's a really great novel, and it's really good, and Natalie's book has got to get published. It's got to. So really, we want to start a publishing club. Like I said, a publishing club." Miss Clayton was having trouble getting her mind around the idea. Zoe nodded. "Uh-huh, Natalie's the writer, I'm her agent, and you're the advisor. You help us. You help us get Natalie's book published. So, it's a publishing club." Both girls stood waiting. Natalie was blushing, looking down at her feet, embarrassed. Not Zoe. Zoe leaned forward, both her hands on her teacher's desk, looking at Mrs. Clayton's face. Mrs. Clayton didn't know what to say. It made sense in a 6th grade sort of way, but somehow she wasn't quite sure why it felt like trouble. She was just about to start shaking her head, just about to start making excuses, just about to say, "No thanks," when Zoe reached into her backpack and pulled out Natalie's manuscript, laying it on the desk. Zoe said, "Well, we've got to go to gym now, so we'll come back and talk to you tomorrow before school. Here's the manuscript. You should read it. It's really good. Okay, see you tomorrow." As the robins began chirping from the speaker below the clock, Zoe took Natalie's hand and pulled her out the doorway. And Miss Clayton gave them a wave and half-dazed little smile and said, "Yeah, fine. See you tomorrow." All right. So we have just been introduced to a new character named Miss Clayton. We know that Miss Clayton is the girls' writing teachers, and we also know that she's a little bit overworked. She works hours at night. Sometimes she feels unprepared for her own classes, but it looks like she's going to help these girls out with their publishing anyway. So what does that tell you about Miss Clayton's character? How would you describe Miss Clayton just from the little bit that we've learned about her?